I am returning to Nazareth. The plan is to send Pandora's actor in my place, but until then, if anything happens, find a way to handle it. Understood, Lord Aints. Right. Then contact me immediately in an emergency. Aints cancelled the magic that had created his armor and swords. The weight of the helmet in his hand disappeared at the same time. The restricting sensations that had been enveloping his body thus removed. He sighed in relief, even though he wasn't tired. It was probably the same for the way he rotated his shoulders, even though they were stiff. These things had to be vestiges of his humanity. Phew, the remnants of human emotion were a bother at times. If he had been able to handle everything in a calm and collected manner, things might have turned out differently. But if he didn't have vestiges of his human self, would he still have been so attached to the great tomb of Nazareth? He probably would have lost the feelings he had towards Satoru Suzuki's memories, as well as the memories he'd made with his friends. Aints smiled bitterly and cast a spell. The thoughts of his human self could no longer be found in even the smallest corner of his mind. Aints wasn't the type of person who could do 2 or 3 things at a time. Now he had to discard any unnecessary thoughts. He cast the spell Greater Teleportation. Thanks to a ring he was wearing, he was able to get through the barriers inside the great tomb of Nazareth. He instantly arrived outside the throne room. Welcome back, Lord Aints. He was immediately greeted by a woman's beautiful voice celebrating his return. Thank you, Albedo. After straightening up from her deep bow, a smile that reminded him of a riot of blooming flowers appeared on her peerlessly beautiful face. She stared at Aints as if she could see nothing else. When he noticed the tender light in her sparkling golden eyes, he nearly wriggled in discomfort. But that would have been unbecoming of the ruler of the great tomb of Nazareth, Aints' gown, so he held it in. In order to suppress the low intensity and thus lingering emotions, he conspicuously cleared his throat, though his bony body didn't require it. The raiders should be here soon, according to plan. Actually, they might be here already. How is the welcome party prep coming along? Swimmingly, my lord. Our guests are sure to have an enjoyable time. I see. Albedo, I am looking forward to seeing your style of hospitality. He stepped into the heart of the great tomb of Nazareth, the throne room. Albedo followed after him a moment later. He'd given her one order with regards to the raiders. He wanted to examine how her idea of a defense system fared in a real battle. His old guildmates were the ones who had thought about which monsters should spawn where and station them accordingly. There was nothing wrong with that, but now that Nazareth's situation had changed, he couldn't say for sure that there wasn't a better way to position them. Thus, an overhaul of the defense system was critical. Now they were going to test it. The raiders are weak. We want to be able to test everything. Still, I am hoping there will be something we can gain from this. Understood. I guarantee we will perform up to your expectations, Lord Aints. Good. As we agreed, I've cut down the amount of cost-incurring traps, like the one where we send undead charging into poison gas. We'll make do with traps that use auto-spawning minions. No issues with that, right? Albedo smiled in response, and Aints nodded. Okay, then I'll have some fun in here for a while. By the way, what are the other floor guardians up to? I gave orders to gather the moment you returned. Shall I let them in as they arrive? I'll allow it. The more the merrier. Aints leisurely took a seat in the throne. A number of monitors, just like television screens, floated before him. They all showed scenes of what was happening inside Nazareth. These were things Albedo wanted to show him as she controlled the displays. Most likely, they showed parts of the defense network that Albedo had adjusted, but he didn't really know what was different from before. In order for this to be a fruitful exercise, I have to get something out of watching this, too. Otherwise, I'll be in a pinch if we were all sharing our opinions afterward. Aints was the absolute ruler of the great tomb of Nazareth. He couldn't very well tell his subordinates he knew nothing about his defense network. And just to make sure, there's no chance of Ariadne activating, right? He asked, even though he had the console open and had confirmed, flipping through the tabs, that there were no issues. I don't believe so. There is one thing I wanted to ask. If the raiders built a blockade, would it end up activating? Aints remembered a Yggdrasil queue and a he'd seen a long time before, or had it been patch notes from the developers? It shouldn't I don't think so. That's how it would have been in Yggdrasil, but there was no guarantee those rules would hold in this world. Actually, He wasn't even sure if there was any Ariadne in this world. What about manipulating the humans to activate it on purpose? There's a chance it wouldn't work, but considering what we lose by it activating, I don't think it's an experiment we want to perform. The Ariadne system, it was the evaluation mechanism of Yggdrasil's base building system. There was an easy way to build an impregnable fortress, blockade the entrance, and make it so no one could invade. The Great Tomb of Nazarick would have been perfect if it had been buried completely underground, but from a gameplay perspective, that couldn't be allowed. The Ariadne system existed to keep guilds from building bases that couldn't be raided. There had to be a route from the entrance to the heart of the dungeon. Ariadne checked other things too, including distance walked inside and the number of doors. There was a wide array of specifications. If a dungeon didn't follow the rules when uploaded to Yggdrasil, the guild would be penalized. Its resources would sharply decrease. In Nazarick's case, they were able to maintain such a vast dungeon because they had solved all those issues on levels 5 and 6. They also put in tons of real cash. The workers appeared on one of the monitors Aints was controlling. Okay, they were finally in. They kept me waiting long enough. Aints was filled with disgust as he watched the video of them tramping with their dirty feet into the sanctuary he built with his friends. If his emotions became too unbalanced, they would stabilize immediately, but this smoldering irritation couldn't be completely suppressed. Albedo, don't let a single one of them out of here alive. Of course not, my lord. Please enjoy witnessing the fate of these thieves who dare trespass on your most sacred home. Oh, but who will you use as the guinea pigs for your sword experiment? The ones you requested? Ah, right. I sparred with the old man for a round. I fenced with this guy on the way here. That team won't be good for practicing, so by process of elimination, they be good. Aints pointed at the monitor, turning it so Albedo could see. Chapter 3, The Great Tomb. The workers led by Greenleaf Palpatra parted with the other excited, expectant teams. They looked out from the top of the stairs, near the entrance to the central mausoleum. Nothing moved in the graveyard. It was sleepy like death. There was only silence, darkness, and starlight. When Palpatra took a step down, one of his teammates spoke. Isn't this kind of a waste, sir? Don't you think one of the other teams could have searched the graveyard? Of course they could have. There isn't a huge gap in ability between the teams, minus that piece of a man. Heavy Masher and Foresight could probably do anything we can. Palpatra interrupted his teammate's thought and continued. We got first dibs on tomorrow's search, right? It's not a total loss. Besides, we may finish searching the ground level by tomorrow, so the last team might end up guarding base camp with no gains at all. I see it as too risky to be the first ones to raid unknown ruins anyhow. They ray our canaries. Hope they make it back safely. Palpatra turned around with a cold glint in his eyes. He was watching the workers who had charged in, though they were no longer visible. The slightly disparaging expression didn't match his usual friendly old man vibe, but his teammates knew him well, so they weren't surprised. Palpatra was an extremely prudent person. He layered precautions on precautions and always looked before leaping. That was how he had been able to continue adventuring for so long. It was also how he managed to defeat a dragon. He was so cautious, in fact, that he occasionally missed out on profitable opportunities. Still, he had never lost a man. His ability was worthy of the faith his teammates put in him. Nothing was more valuable than life to any of them, but they still regretted losing the riches they felt had slipped through their fingers. It might have been a chance to discover an amazing item. It might have been worth betting our lives. You might be right, but take a look at this well-kept graveyard. If someone is keeping this place tidy, there will definitely be monsters to greet us. It's better to have the others investigate what types of monsters there are, don't you think? Personally, I don't much care for this type of request. Too many uncertainties. One of his teammates replied to these grumbles with a flippant, but in the end you took it. Yes, because I figured if there were other teams, we could escape while they end up victims. The party reached the bottom of the stairs. Is that why you took on the search of the ground level? So if we hear them scream, we can run away? That's one reason. I am making a bet, as you said earlier, we stand to lose a lot. It should be safer once we have more information, but it's unclear how many benefits there really are. If it doesn't work out, allow me to apologize. Don't worry about it, sir. We trust you no matter what. You tend to make the right choice. And if we do miss out here, we'll just gnash our teeth and make a killing on the next job. Aren't you the one who said that as long as you ray alive, you'll always have another chance to profit, so you shouldn't go recklessly rushing into danger? Ah, that takes me back. We were young then, you're still young. Well, when you say it, so the party all smiled wryly as they set off across the graveyard toward one of the smaller mausoleums. Actually, I am sorry I made a decision on my own when I should have conferred with the rest of you first. Well, there wasn't much you could have done, given the timing. Plus, we chose you as our leader. If our trusted leader decides something, we're happy to obey. You seem disappointed, though. What are those bitter smiles for? Well, anyhow, let us get down to business here. If we have time left after the search, maybe we can get Momon to give us some training. It's a good opportunity, so you fellows should try sparring with him too. Yeah, his match with you is burned into our brains. He really is an adamantite rank. There are all different levels within adamantite rank. Frankly, the Empire S8 ripples aren't really adamantite caliber. Momon is a true adamantite rank on a level above the one I couldn't even reach. So higher, no worries. In my heyday I might have been jealous, but now I am just a wrinkly old man. It's not a shock to me, and I've seen my share of true adamantites, but Momon is outstanding. His presence feels like the true of the true. Really? Yeah, that is why you really should have him go at you, even just casually. If you're going to keep adventuring even after I die, it's an experience you'll treasure. There's no way you're going to die, sir. I can even imagine you retiring. Yeah, I think you'll live as long as Paradine. Higher. Nah, that's impossible for me. Here's something else. What a wonderful team you are. Suddenly the quiet voice of a woman. In this group there were 2 women on Hecarin's team, Foresight, and 3 elf slaves on Elia's team, Tenbu, but the voice was none of those. The party raised their weapons and whirled around. At the top of the gently sloping stairs they had just descended, at the entrance to the mausoleum, stood women in maid uniforms, 5 of them. They were all unbelievably beautiful, which made them seem very out of place. The strange thing was that although they wore maid uniforms, the outfits were unlike any Palpatra had ever seen before. They had a metallic gleam like armor. Who are you? I've never seen you before. So there was a secret passage after all. Girls, they were as pretty as Raven Black's beautiful princess, but they must be more than just looks, huh? They don't seem hostile. Maybe they were hired by someone else. Now that can be. What should we do, sir? Palpatra's teammates, watching the maid's every move, looked to him for direction. Negotiating would have been best, but things wouldn't resolve amicably. Number-wise, we were even. Maybe it'll be okay. Their opponents were as strong, or perhaps slightly stronger than they were. The fact that they hadn't attacked while all the workers were together meant they probably didn't have a trap or the might to take everyone at once. Likewise, since they came straight at Palpatra's team and talked to them now, they were probably confident they could beat them. As Palpatra had gotten older, his body didn't perspire like it used to, but at this moment, the hands clenching his spear were clammy. Still, maids in a graveyard. This guy's taste is suspect. The team went from chatty to pale and trembling in a moment. Their foreheads were slick with sweat. Palpatra felt, for a split second, that the temperature had plunged. The goosebumps covering his entire body were not his imagination. Even by the light of the moon, he could see the cutthroat looks in the eyes of the maids lined up above them. Let us kill them, we should. Normally we wouldn't kill them, but put them through incredible amounts of pain, wouldn't we? The maids were awash with killing intent. Their emotional agitation seemed to warp space. Okay. The one who seemed to have the highest status clapped her hands lightly. We were ordered not to let anyone out alive, so killing them was already decided. I am glad you were all in the mood. A metallic clack rang out loudly on the marble steps. It was made by the greave-like high heels the maids were wearing. Palpatra and his team backed up, as if they'd been pushed. Judging from the fact that their opponents carried no weapons, they had to be casters. It was a bad plan to let them have the higher, more advantageous ground. It was also a bad plan to set this open area with a clear line of fire as the battlefield. For Palpatra and his team, closing the distance would be effective. The maids would have the advantage in the opposite scenario, so why were they coming down the stairs? Would they float into the sky with fly if needed? Bewildered by the stately approach of the maids, whose faces were as expressionless as no masks, Palpatra and his team conferred behind their shields about what to do and what strategy to use. Clack! The sound was louder now. The maids had stopped midway down the stairs. "First, allow me to introduce myself," said Yuri Alpha, the deputy leader of the Pleiades. "We'll only be with one another a short while, but I hope you'll remember me. Now then, this would be over much more quickly if we could clean you up ourselves. But due to certain circumstances, we are unable to lay a hand on you directly. It's unfortunate, but that's how it is." Adorable voices, like bells ringing, traveled on the wind until they reached the workers. The smiles of these peerless beauties were so charming it wouldn't have been strange to fall in love at first sight. Palpatra had seen a lot of things in all his years. First, he was an adventurer, then a worker. That included the inhuman beauty of monsters. Even he had never seen such a pretty woman as Yuri. She was so gorgeous he thought he might lose his senses, but under one layer of thin skin, beneath her regular features, lay a crushing pride. It made itself known through the contempt in her way of addressing them. Superiority oozed at the edges of her words. For men who had made it through many adventures and were confident in their skill, the arrogance was obnoxious. It was enough to make them want to hurt her a little. As elaborated on earlier, however, there was mounting evidence that suggested the overwhelming strength of these women. This seemed contrary to their appearance, so the men couldn't quite commit themselves to a charge. One of them, struck by the maid party's killing intent, still looked plain scared. Perhaps their best course of action was to retreat and involve the adventurers, especially Momon, in the fight. Yuri clapped her hands twice. The sound carried surprisingly far, and the graveyard shook as if in response. "Come on out, Nazarick old guarders." "What?" Palpatra yelped. Behind them the ground split open, and multiple skeletons appeared. Were they pincered? No. Looking up at the stairs, he saw that while the maids were hostile, any hint of a will to fight had disappeared. Perhaps one could say they'd gone into spectator mode. The workers couldn't let down their guard, but at least for now there was no sign of the women attacking, as they had said. Concluding that their opponents for the time being were the newcomer skeletons to the rear, Palpatra took a good look at them. Skeletons weren't such tough enemies. Palpatra and his team could be attacked by 100 and methodically annihilate them without even getting scared. In that case, the 8 skeletons that had crawled out of the ground weren't opponents at all. There was just one problem. Palpatra and his teammates all swallowed hard and took an unconscious step back. These didn't seem like ordinary skeletons. They had different gear, too. They wore quality breastplates, like the type bodyguards of a country's leader would wear. They carried kite shields emblazoned with a crest, and they wielded a diverse array of weapons. They wore composite longbows across their backs. Every bit of their gear had the sparkle of magical energy. Skeletons armed with magic items couldn't be ordinary skeletons. "What are those?" "You don't know either, sir. I am not positive, but I think they are a subtype of skeleton warriors." "A subtype? Well, they don't seem like red skeleton warriors." Facing an enemy they knew nothing about was terrifying. This was all the more so because that enemy was outfitted with magic items that had special effects. "Judging from your numbers, we think this many will be enough. Do your best. Let us see how far you can run. To be given such powerful undead as opponents, what an honor." However, Palpatra thought calmly, it would be no easy feat to ready an endless supply of fancily equipped undead. They must have come out swinging with their strongest force. If they had something stronger, they never would have let the invasion begin. "So this is the mightiest these ruins have to offer. Did you think you could stop us with these?" When he looked up, he saw Yuri's eyes darting around. She was mildly shaken. "Well, I see. So this conversation was supposed to be a trap. The smartest use of their most powerful forces would have been to defeat each enemy as it came inside the tomb. But considering the chance of not encountering them, maybe it was smarter to concentrate their forces on the exit the place. The physically and mentally exhausted raiders would have to pass after their search. He could see through their aim. The maids, taught to do their best at running away, put the idea of fleeing in their heads. This allowed her and her companions to attack them from behind with the advantage. They had multiple battles ahead, so of course they would want to minimize their losses. So there was only one thing Palpatra and his team had to do. We just have to defeat all the skeletons and break through, right? They had to fight off the Nazarick old guarders for the other teams who would return later. The workers were rivals, but also teammates. Besides, if the intention was for them to flee, it would be harder for the maids to catch them in their trap if they stood and fought instead. Keeping in mind the plan of getting Momon and the others into the battle if their opponents started to seem tough, Palpatra figured they should fight, knowing it was dangerous. Contrary to my plans, we raid the Canaries. My head hurts. Do you think that's all of them? It's hard to imagine they could have more undead with that level of gear. This is a path any raiders would have to take, so putting their strongest force here is an optimal strategy.